Empty to touching, girl, I can't wait. Oh. Girl, I want mess your body, yeah. That no go stress your body, yeah. Ice cream lick your body, yeah. She me yeah.
Yes, yo.
Mess your body, yeah.
Right, so this is Ice Cream by Dreshie. In my last video, I did the breakdown for the beat. Today, we're going to do the breakdown for the mix and master. As usual, I'm going to walk you through my process and hopefully you can pick up one or two things you can use in your own mix, okay? I actually mixed the song a while back and my process has changed a little bit. First being that I now only mix and master in Pro Tools. But this was done in Logic back then. What I'm doing for the drums is actually very straightforward. First thing I start with is gain staging. If it's too quiet, I'm going to increase the level, and if it's too loud, I'm going to turn down the level. And if you look at the kick, you see that I'm not doing any gain staging per se. The peak level is minus 10 dB. Usually the recommended level is around minus 18 to minus 15 dB, but I'm not going to stress myself over that. And also I have enough headroom, so that's good enough for me. But if we go over to the next sound, right, which is this percussion, you can see that I'm using the gain plugin to turn down the level a little bit so I can have some more headroom. And then if we go over to the next one, see there's no gain plugin there. No gain. So yeah, I would only do that when it's necessary, but it's something that, you know, you have to bear in mind if you ask me. Gauge your levels first. Make sure everything is right before you even start doing anything else. So aside that, what else are we doing? Yeah, I'm just using EQ to take out all of the unwanted frequencies. I mentioned in my last video how to do this correctly. That's by making sure you are listening so that you are not shaving off the actual sound, right? You just want to take off all of the frequencies that are not important, but will technically still be occupying space in the frequency range. And the Pro Q3 EQ has a solo button that lets you listen to the frequency range. If I was cutting up to here, I would be destroying the sound. You know, you just want to make sure you're shaving off parts that you don't hear, but technically still occupying the frequency spectrum, basically. And that's what I'm doing basically for all of the instruments. Yeah. That's my mix process generally, except there's an instrument where I feel like I need to add some clarity. So I would boost, you know, around the high mids or the high frequency basically. And then I'm also routing all of the drums to the drum bus where I'm doing the glue compression for the drums. And I'm using this UAD Teletronics LA2 compressor for that. Notice I'm barely doing any compression. I'm using this compressor mainly to increase the level of the drum so that it's really punchy. And then I'm doing parallel compression as well. I'm going to leave a link here to a video to show you how to do this properly, but it's easy. All I'm doing is sending a copy of all of the drums to another bus where I have this 1176 compressor, compressing the hell out of everything that is going into that bus, and then I'm blending it with the original drum bus to add extra punch to the overall drums without losing headroom. Let's meet the parallel compression and hear the difference. So without it, and then with it. Right, you can hear that it is adding life to the drums, which is very cool. And then let's go back to the bass real quick. My process again is the same. I'm going to gain stage if I need to, but I'm not doing any gain staging here, so which means the level is good enough for me. And I'm doing a low cut up to 20 hertz for the bass. Yo. Right, and as usual, I've sent this to my bass bus where I'm doing my compression, right? But there's also something I'm doing to the bass bus. I'm using Saturn 2 to add a bit of harmonic saturation and distortion to the bass frequencies from 348 Hz and up. Doing this actually helps to give the bass a little bit more punch and it helps it to cut through the mix a little bit more. And also, when you're playing the song on the phone speakers or laptop speakers or anything that doesn't have a sub attached to it, you'll be able to actually hear the bass. Let's listen to that, right? So I'm doing a bit of a drive up to 61% here. Very basic stuff. This is before. And then after. And with the beat.
Girl, I want mess your body, yeah. That no go stress your body, yeah. Ice cream lick your body, yeah. She me, yeah.
It will just help the bass cut through a little bit more. That's all I'm doing for the bass. And now let's go over to the melodies. Again, the same process. right? Gain staging. If you notice here, I'm actually adding gain to the signal because it wasn't loud enough. Let's see where that took our peak level to. Yeah, and I took my peak level to minus 15 dB, which is great. And then what else am I doing here? As usual, I'm doing a cut, removing frequencies that are not necessary. Also, there's a school of thought about this process. Some people believe you should do a shelf. Some people believe you should do a cut. I think do whatever sounds better for you. Sometimes doing a cut like this might cause phasing issues, but hardly, rarely, right? So I just prefer to just do a cut rather than do shelf type EQ. That's just me. But try and see what works and see what sounds better to you and for your record. And the same thing for the rest of the instruments here in the melody section. Gain stage where I need to, cut where I need to. What's this? I think I'm doing something here. This is a chorus plugin basically. Right? Just to widen the sound a little bit. Not too much. Right, that's what I'm doing here. Next one, the same thing. Just doing a cut here as well. I have these two tracks here. This is the reverb and delay bus from the FL session. Right? I'm not doing anything to these ones. I'm just balancing it in the mix. This is also going to the melody bus, basically. Right, and then as usual, a bit of compression.
Ice cream lick your body,
You can see that the needle is hardly moving, but my major use for this compressor is usually to just add gain to the overall sound, basically, because it's very, very good for that.
I know go stress your body, ice cream lick your body,
Great, and then let's go over to the vocals. And my process has changed a little bit from when I mixed this song. For example, nowadays my vocal chain, what I like to do is put the multi-band compressor between my compressors, basically, because I compress in series. I have one compressor to tame peaks, another compressor to even out the performance of the vocals. What I like to do now is place the multi-band compressor after the first compressor, and then second compressor comes after the multi-band compressor. But here what I did was just put the multi-band compressor after both compressors. But you know, it sounded very, very great here. It's just now I like to do things a little bit differently. Okay. And yeah, for the lead vocals, what I'm doing here is a bit of gain staging as usual. On the main track itself, I have the gain plugin, okay, and then I have the wave tune plugin for my pitch correction and whatnot. And then the rest of the processing is happening in the lead vocal bus. So one more thing I need to quickly mention with bus processing: all of the plugins that you have in your bus are going to react to the signal you're sending to them based on the level of that signal. So which means if you send all of your drums to your drum bus and did your compression and it sounded great, if you go ahead later to, say for example, drop the level of all of the drums because you thought maybe they're too loud, it will change the characteristics of everything you've done in the drum bus. So you have to always remember to go back to your drum bus and make the necessary adjustment. If not, the sound is going to change drastically, because if you reduce the volume of the individual drum tracks, for example, the compression that you did in the drum bus will not be as effective anymore. So you need to always constantly remember to go back to the drum bus and tweak your compressor settings, especially the compressor. Actually tweak the compressor settings so that you continue to retain the sound that you've already created. Do you understand? It's very, very important, because I didn't know that for a while when I actually started mixing, and I've been wondering what happened. Why is the sound changing? I think the best way to go about this is make the adjustment you want to make to the level of the drums with the bus fader. Okay, by that I mean, if you want the drums or vocals or anything you sent to that particular bus to be quieter, just reduce the fader. If you want it to be louder, maybe increase it. Do you understand what I'm saying? That way you're not affecting the quality of the sound. The sound stays the same, but you're just changing the level of the sound. Very, very important if you're working with bus processing. All right, so let's look at the vocal chain real quick. One thing that did not change is I always like to have the NS1 noise suppressor at the very top of the vocal chain to catch, you know, any noise. You can actually use gate if you wanted to. It kind of serves as the same thing. And then we have an EQ here to take out all of the resonant frequencies. I'm going to leave a link here as well to a video on how you can do this from scratch. And then I go into the DSR. The ideology is, you know, fix problems first before I go into EQing and then tone shaping. First common problems will be noise, resonant frequencies, and a bit of sibilance, you know. And then once that's done, I go into the EQ. I'm using the SSLE channel strip, boosting up to, that's 9 dB, around 16 Hz for air. That's on the high frequency. And on the high mid, I'm doing a cut around 3K up to -3 dB. And I've set this to be a wide bell. basically. Around 3K is usually where there's like harshness in the vocals, so you want to tame that first before you go into compression. And then on the low mid, I'm doing a cut around 800 hertz up to 9 dB, also with a wide bell. Cut around the low mid frequency here usually helps the vocals sit properly in the mix, right? And then on the low frequency, I'm doing a cut around 270 up to -8 dBs.
Girl, I want mess your body, yeah. I no go stress your body, yeah. Ice cream lick your body, yeah. Shimmy and shimmy, yeah.
The vocals here is very, very crisp. I really love the way it sounds. Anyways, so after the EQing, we go into compression. So the first compressor, like I mentioned, is basically just taming peaks. And then the next compressor is going to even out the performance and bring the vocals to the front and give it that punch, right, that we need. That's what I'm doing here. And then the Pro MB to further shape the tone of the vocal. Again, this is how I used to work. I don't work like this anymore. Now I have the multi-band compressor in between the two compressors that I use. And then there's another DS at the end of the vocal chain to capture any sibilance that would have built up due to the processes that we've done so far. It happens a lot usually. And then we go into all the time-based effects. I like to work with two reverbs. The first reverb is the room reverb, and in this case we're using the 5-footer Pro R, and I've set the reverb time to be a very short reverb time. There's a way to calculate this actually. I did a video before, but I think the calculation there was too long and it's confusing people. So the short way to do this is 60,000 divided by your BPM, okay? That would give you the value of the reverb time, but in milliseconds. If you look down here on that space, you see the time is 612 milliseconds. That's the correct shortest reverb time for this BPM, okay? But up here it says 0.61. That's because this has been converted into seconds. And that's also something people don't bear in mind when they're doing this calculation. Some plugins record reverb times in seconds. So, and if you do your calculation, what you're getting is the time in milliseconds. So you have to convert that to seconds. And to convert that to seconds is simple. You just divide by 1,000. That's why you get 0.61 seconds here. And for the longer reverb, I'm using H reverb. Let's do the calculation for this from scratch so we can see how this is actually done. BPM is what, 98, okay? So we're going to go 60,000, right, divided by 98, and that gives us 612 milliseconds. Obviously, we need to convert this first to seconds, okay? So we're going to divide this by 1,000. Now we have 0.612, blah, 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 whatever seconds. And now we're going to times this by 8 to get to the quarter note value for this BPM, okay? Which in this case is 4.89 or approximately 4.9. So I actually made a mistake here and I did 4.80. Anyways, it worked. But let me quickly point out that while you can calculate this to get the exact correct reverb time, it doesn't necessarily have to be exact. Do you understand? If you get close enough, it will sound good. And to be honest, you can also just use your ear, and if it sounds good, it sounds good. Do you understand what I'm saying? But that's the way to calculate the reverb time in case you are wondering, or in case you want to do it, basically. And then if we go over to the backups here.
Mess your body, stress your body, lick your body,
Sounds very, very nice. The first thing I'm doing here is routing all of the backup vocals through a summing bus. I don't know why it's named default setting here, but anyways, they're going through a bus first. And in that bus, I'm using this multi-band compressor to tame the frequencies of the vocals from 1 kilohertz up to 4 kilohertz. But that's the frequency range where the vocals naturally sit. So with the multi-band compressor, I'm ducking all of the backup vocals just by a little bit, okay? So that the lead vocals will always cut through in the mix. So it's like pushing the backup vocals to the back, literally, no pun intended, right? And the setting is very, very simple for this. What I'm doing is a very fast attack, very slow release, because I want the compressor to catch the signal as soon as it goes beyond the threshold. But I also want the compressor to hold on to the compression so that the lead will always be the lead, basically, and the vocals will just kind of be pushed back to the background a little bit. So that's the first thing I'm doing to the backup vocals before they even go into the vocal chain. I route them first to the first bus, and then I route the first bus to the backup vocal chain bus, basically. And that's where I'm doing all of the processing. And I'm just doing the processing a little bit differently. It's the same, but just slightly different so that there's no competing with the lead vocals in any way. But that multi-band compression that I've already done earlier actually does remove all of that competing. To be honest, it just eliminates that first of all before anything. And I'm using a much bigger reverb for the backup vocals as well, again, just to create 3D effect and just set it apart. But let's go over to the ad-libs. I do have a separate bus for the ad-libs as well, again, just to process the ad-libs a little bit different. right? I have more reverb and a different delay time. I'm using an 8-note delay for the ad-lib to get this bouncy effect that we're hearing. Right? That's against the...
Lick your body up. Shimmy up.
As against the quarter notes that I'm using for everything else.
Girl, I want mess your body up. I know go stress your body up. Ice cream lick your body up. Shimmy on, shimmy up.
This is a very, very dope record. I'm going to leave a link below so you guys can listen to the record. Trust me, you want to listen to the record. I'm also doing I'm doing EQ matching. I'm using this fab filter EQ to sidechain the vocals to the beat, so that when the song is playing, the dynamic EQ will create pockets in the beat where the vocals will sit into, just to create that perfect blend, basically.
I no go stress your body, ice cream lick your body, shimmy on, shimmy up. Girl, I want mess your body, I no go stress your body, ice cream lick your body, shimmy on, shimmy up. Keep on shatter in the bando, different kind of shoddy, but now you are one though.
I'm going to leave a link to a video I made on how to actually set this up so that, you know, you can try it for yourself. It's actually a very useful tool. So that's that for the mix. The mastering is very straightforward. My process is still the same. I have a VU meter at the top of my chain. You know, just to measure the levels going into the mastering chain. The goal is to make sure I'm just barely hitting red or staying at 0. 0 is equal to -6 dB of headroom, basically. Okay. And then, I'm using OZO 9 here. You see, this is a long time ago. Now I'm using OZO 11 and doing some EQ in here and then stereo imaging. And I'm using the Potec from UAD to boost the low end around 60 Hz and boost the high frequencies around 16 kilohertz at the very top for that shine. Okay, I'm also attenuating around 10 kilohertz as well. Let me know in the comment below if you want me to make a video on how to actually use this plugin. It's a very, very dope EQ. And then the SSL G Master Bus compressor to glue the whole record together. A bit of saturation with the Abbey Root saturator. IM Pusher. This is one of my favorite plugins in my mastering chain. It's very, very dope. I made a video and I'm going to leave a link here on how you can actually just use this plugin alone to master a record. And then the last plugin in the mastering chain is the L2 from Fab Filter. I mainly use the clip function on the IM Pusher to clip the signal and increase the perceived loudness so that when I go into the limiting, I don't do so much limiting, right? As you can see, I'm just doing like 4 dB here.
Ice cream lick your body, shimmy on, shimmy up. Girl, I want mess your body, I no go stress your body, ice cream lick your body,
That's actually one trick that you can use to actually get very loud masters. As you can see, we are hitting -9 LUFS, which is very competitive loudness. That's it. I'm also going to leave a link below to my store in case you want to buy my vocal preset and mastering preset. Okay, so yeah, man, that's that. That's everything I did for this record. This is a very dope record. Like I said, I'm going to leave a link below so you can listen. It's really, really sick. You guys have to run the numbers up on this record. Produced, mixed and mastered by me, performed by Dreshie. Dreshie is an amazing writer as well. Written and performed by Dreshie. Dope record. Okay, so yeah, man, that's all for now. I hope you got something from this. If you did, as usual, make sure you leave me a like and subscribe if you've not. If you want to book my services for mixing and mastering in stereo and Dolby Atmos, I'm going to leave a link to the engineers page so you can book me on engineers.com, or you can hit me up on Instagram at BennyMacaulayDB. Okay, and if you are a music producer or an upcoming artist and you want to record yourself and you only have Logic, I'm going to leave a link below as well to my free Logic Pro recording template with a free Afrobeat preset with all stock plugins. Very, very straightforward and easy to use. So yeah, that's going to be it for now. I shall see you on the next one. Benny Macaulay out.
Girl, I want bless your body, I no go stress your body, ice cream lick your body, shimmy on, shimmy up. Girl, I want bless your body, I no go stress your body, ice cream lick your body, shimmy on, shimmy up. Keep on shatter in the bando, different kind of shoddy, but now you are one though. You're my Eminado, girl, I'm a wine, tap but I know if you want you. She take on me.